So I had said last week that I was going to start doing my videos earlier in the week, and that is somewhat true. It is late Thursday evening as opposed to Friday afternoon, so I guess that's an improvement, and hopefully it will continue to improve in the coming weeks. So I wanted to do my weekly talk now, and we are beginning a whole new book in the Torah, the second book of Shemot, which means names in the translation of the Hebrew to the English, but is called Exodus, which is already a really fascinating thing. And this one's going to be a different thing because I'm basically going to just share a personal story if my battery does not die on me. So, to begin with, that's already this fascinating thing. Why is Exodus, which is this idea of leaving Egypt, leaving slavery, leaving constriction and restriction, and being bound and breaking free and entering into a new state of reality, associated with names? And part of that is that in order to become free, we need to know our name. We need to know who we are, and we need to also attach and connect to our real name, our real essence, because we have a lot of names that we're given and even roles and names that are not really intrinsic and true to who we are, names other people may want to put on us, but identifying with and connecting to our true name is the way we really find freedom in our lives. And there is an amazing statement that the sages teach that's in the Talmud, that basically the one time in our lives that we are blessed with prophecy is when we name our children. And that's really this idea that no matter what name we give, and no matter what reason we have for that name, and whatever our motivation is, and if we love the name, or if it's an obligatory name, if we're naming maybe after someone who had passed, and therefore we give that name, or if it's a name that we always dreamt of giving a son or a daughter, it doesn't matter what our reasoning is. There is a prophetic reason for that name, and that is something that may or may not become easily revealed through that child's life, but will be something that will hopefully become more and more and more meaningful as that child grows, and that the meaning and power of that name will come to fruition. So based on that, I want to share a personal story because I am named after my maternal grandmother. So my full name that I was given when I was born is Sara Esther. I am called a number of different combinations of that. Some people call me Sara. Some people call me Sara Esther. Some people even call me Esther, and I don't usually respond to that because I don't associate so much with that. But my full name is my maternal grandmother's name, and yet she never used her full name in that way. She was called Sally, which was the nickname for Sara, and she passed away before I was born. My mother was actually pregnant with me, although she never knew that, and she passed away before I ever came into this world, so obviously I never got to meet her, but in her memory and in her honor, I was given her name. So growing up, I was always Sara, and I actually was really embarrassed by the Esther part of it because it was just this like matronly name that I had no connection with, and I never told anybody my middle name. I remember if anybody ever saw, my license or any kind of legal ID, it became like this big joke, like, oh, Sara Esther, however people would joke about it. But I never connected to it. I never used it. It never had any relevance to me. So fast forward a number of years, and I am in college. And for my junior year in college, I am studying in Israel. I'm at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And at a certain point in the year, I am fortunate enough to meet this wonderful rabbi, Moshe Schloss. Moshe, hello if you're watching this, Rabbi Schloss. And I start learning with him in the old city of Jerusalem. And as we are learning, at a certain point, he basically stops and he says, you are just you're blocked. You're just not open to this. I feel like you've kind of like reached, you've hit this like barrier, and there's this limit. And unless you're willing to break open and really take it to the next step, like, I just feel like you're not growing anymore. And I had no idea what he was talking about, because I was really into it. I was really loving the learning, and I felt like I was really present and giving it my all. And in the discussions, trying to understand what he was referring to, what he was alluding to, he asked me eventually if maybe there was another part to my name. He knew me as Sara, and that was the end of it. And I said, well, I have a middle name. I never use it, but my middle name is Esther. And it was like, full stop. He's like, that's it. He's like, you are Sara. You are Sara. You've got her down, but there is no Esther. Like, that's what's missing. And he continued to explain that Esther was the reincarnation of Sara. And she completed what Sara wasn't able to. And he continued with all these amazing connections between the two, that Sara lived. We're talking about our matriarch, Sara, Abraham's wife. Sara lived 127 years, whereas Queen Esther ruled over 127 nations. Sara is the first woman who is discussed in the biblical works in Tanakh, and Esther is the last. Sarah is connected to laughter because the name she gives to her son Isaac, which in Hebrew, Yitzchak Tzchok, is laughter. And Esther is the story connected to Purim, where we're told to be marbin b'simcha, to increase in our joy. And the most powerful of the connections is that it says when Sara encountered negativity, toxicity, she wanted it out. She wanted it away from her. She wanted it just gone. And when she kicks out Yishmael, and Abraham's really hesitant to do this, she is she's basically considered correct. And God says to Abraham, Kol asher tomar lecha Sara shema b'kola. Everything Sara tells you, you are to listen to her voice. At some point, I wanted to get like t-shirts with that, verse made on it for my family to wear and to remember. And it says b'kola, her voice, are the same letters as Kabbalah, which is an allusion to prophecy. So, and then there's also a connection to Esther with this, that not only does it say with her, kimu v'kiblu, also the same root, but when she encounters evil, she takes a very different approach, which is how she is Sarah's rectification, and also her reincarnation. And rather than exposing it and kicking it out, she's like, you know what? I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to have some patience. I'm going to take a different approach. Patience is something I often lack. And I'm going to let it reveal itself. Like, give it time, and it's just going to make itself really painfully obvious. And that's exactly what happens. And Esther solves the problem. It doesn't continue to come back because she didn't just kick it out. She allowed it to take care of itself. So I had all these amazing connections that he spoke to me about. And I started using my full name, Sara Esther. And if you call me Sara, that's perfectly fine because here in Vermont, people know me as Sara. But for, from that point on, basically, I used my full name, Sara Esther. And to just conclude with this, because that was already amazing enough. And then I knew this was obviously like the power behind my name and why I had this name. But a number, not actually so many years after that, a few years after that, I started dating. And I met Asher. And as we were dating and seemed things were, getting pretty serious, and I started thinking like, I might just marry this guy, I started playing around with how my new last name would look, and writing out Sara Esther Crisp and my initials. And I don't know, playing around with all this stuff, and I noticed something really fascinating. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, and it's probably going to be backwards, but yeah, it's probably backwards. Here is my name in Hebrew, Sara and Esther. And what is pretty amazing about that is I am circling, I already messed that up. I circled 4 letters. Okay, ignore this one. If you take, I'm not doing this paper. If you take the very first letter of my Hebrew name, it's a shin. It's a sin. If you take the very middle letter of my Hebrew name, it's an aleph, because I have 7 letters in my name with Sara and Esther. And the very last letter in my name is a resh. So I have 3 Hebrew letters, first, middle, and last. Those 3 letters, if you turn around their order, spell Asher. So, it doesn't work in a live video. Like, I need like a, so I'm going to pretend you're all oohing and ahhing right now. But beginning, middle, and last, Sara Esther ends up being Asher. So that is my story of my name. As we begin the Book of Names, I encourage all of you to look into your name, to find out why you were given it, to find its etymology and its meaning and its power. And if you have a Hebrew name, a Jewish name, find it, tap into it. There is so much in your story and in your journey connected to that name, because ultimately the way we break out of our boundaries is through connecting to our true name and our true calling and knowing really who we are. So have a great Shabbos, and I will try to even make this earlier next week. All right, bye. And I see you, and Rachel, I'll be calling you. Bye.